So I wanted to start today with one of my famous quotes. We're toast in the water. And you might look at that and say, well, that doesn't really make sense. You got that wrong, and you're right. I did get that wrong. But it'll allow you to understand how my brain works. So I did want to warn you that I may use more of these expressions today that don't really make sense, and I would advise you to never use them in public and just leave them at home. You will look like an idiot. So let's start with some stats. Let's get the boring stuff out of the way. So we've got 85 and 15. So 85% represents the amount of business owners, leaders, managers that work in their business, that are firefighting and, trying to do the same thing over and over again, looking for a different result, which is, funny enough, that's the definition of insanity. The 15%, and I've been in both areas, the 15% are those of us who get to take a moment to breathe and be strategic. And I'd argue that even those who are doing that are really just refining things. We're trying to put out the fire a little faster. We're trying to change things so that the fire won't be as big. So I would argue it's fairly close to the 85%. It's like being insane. It's like not being fully diagnosed with insanity, but being very close. Similar to my mother. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Mom. Okay. So look, I wanted to tell you some stories about how we went back to the drawing board in a very challenging industry and the incredible results we've had from that. And I'd hope to inspire you to be able to do the same. So where does this all begin? It starts 14 years ago right here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I entered in the private security industry, so security guarding. And it's a tough industry. It's been commoditized, even though it's human beings. It's major price drives from the clients, which was really put the entire space in a commodity racket. There hasn't been any changes in years. And even being in this space, I thought, you know what? We're pretty good problem solvers. I remember 5 years ago, a Bon Jovi concert up in Moncton. There was probably 25,000, 30,000 people there. We had 150 security. And so halfway through the show, the RCMP, they come to me and they said, Ron, we have a problem. I said, what is it? They said, we have people peeing all along the fence line. There's hundreds and hundreds of people peeing everywhere. So I said, okay. And they said, and if you don't fix it, we'll shut the concert down. So, this is a problem. I've got to solve it. Of course, I say, okay, we've got this. It wasn't our fault. They didn't have enough porta potties. But as security provider, we did have to solve the problem. So I gathered 20 security around. I said, look, I need 6 volunteers to come with me on a mission. And what we're going to do, we're going to go up the fence line. We'll stand about 5 or 6 feet back on the outside of the fence line. It's an 8-foot tall fence, so we'll be nice and safe. And we will go up and down, and we will make fun of every one of those wiener sizes. And I guarantee, if we do a good job at it, they will stop peeing. And lo and behold, 6 female volunteers said, we would love to come on that mission with you. So up we go. We go up and down, the 6 of us, okay? And sure enough, we made fun of all the wiener sizes, big, small, the different sizes and shapes. And within minutes, there wasn't a peer in sight. We were good. We could always solve problems. But, it wasn't enough. I would argue that our competition could solve that same problem. They might have done it differently, but they could solve the same issue. And so, in this space, it's very challenging. And so I had some hard moments of, do I even want to stay in? It wasn't enough to win. And so I went through this process of going back to the drawing board. But the first time I didn't make it all the way back. The first time I actually started with a border. And I got to a question. And the question was, if I had $1 million of my hard-earned money, my retirement funds, and I was going to buy my business, knowing what I know about my company, what would I do differently? Who would continue to work there? Who would I be excited to work with? What clients would I keep? What systems would we use? And it was okay, but I'd argue we were back into that 15%. We were being a little strategic. It wasn't enough. And then we went back again, and this time I took the border out, and we went back to the drawing board, clean slate. Different question. This time the question was, what if I had to restart the industry today? knowing the challenges internally and the external client challenges, if I had a blank slate using technology and resources that I have today at our fingertips, how would I recreate a model to service this industry? And, I feel like that's what Uber did. Uber, the creators of Uber, they didn't own a taxi company. They weren't in the taxi business. I'm sure they were a customer on multiple occasions. And here you are, taxi companies that were probably asleep at the wheel, okay, thinking about how to refine their business. How do we, pick up customers faster? Maybe we should get a radio system that works a little better. But Uber went back to the drawing board. That's what they essentially did. They kind of said, well, knowing what I know today, if we had to recreate this industry, how would we do that with technology and everything at our fingertips? So we started to do that. We actually landed on a purpose of changing the security industry. And that was powerful because it started to drive everything that we did. So we started with simple things, like the golden rule. My mother always told me growing up, always go by the golden rule. Treat those as you would like to be treated. I don't know where I think my mom's from here, but... And, we thought about that. And we said, let's go back to the drawing board. Because think about the golden rule that we all know. I know when I meet someone for the very first time, I would love you to take off my shoes and give me a foot rub for a half hour. But I don't know if you would like me to do that to you. So we said, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's think about this. And we re-engineered it and said, what about treating those as they would like to be treated? And so we started to push that out with our customer service model, and we had some great results. Then we looked at policy. In our industry, it's very policy-driven. There's tons of policy, and it becomes who can implement the best policy and have the most efficient policies. And policies are like rules, and we said, look, some of the challenges in this industry are people don't get to think for themselves. They follow policy. So what if we created a decision-making process? What if we gave people their brains back and we said, you know what, before you do something, just go through this process. Number one, if it's the right thing to do for the customer, yes or no, then is it the right thing for our business, based on our purpose and our values? And number three, are you willing to be accountable? If it's yes, yes, and yes, don't ever ask anyone, just do it. And we started to see some results. We gave people their brains back. And then, on this journey of changing the industry, we got to a very difficult place that we said, look, we need everybody on side. And the toughest challenge we faced was, could we get employees in this business to become stakeholders? Not shareholders, not own a piece of the business, but a stakeholder, someone who had a stake in the decisions of this business, someone who wanted to be a part of it. And everyone said, you can't do that. It's impossible. This is a high turnover industry. People are treated like garbage. It's got horrible morale. And so we were up for the challenge. We had to do it. To win, we had to get everyone on side. So off we went. Brings me to a story in Toronto. We took over a customer in the trucking space. And the manager there, the security manager, a fellow by the name of Ashwani. So Ashwani is a security manager. He's worked there for 10, 15 years for multiple companies, because in our space, what happens is when you gain a security contract, the individuals might work there for years, and then they put the new company's uniform on, and off they go. So I get a phone call from him. He says, Mr. Lovett, first I'd like to congratulate you on the contract. I said, thanks, Ashwani. He said, I have a question. He said, we need a vehicle here. I said, yeah. He said, what kind of vehicle are we going to buy? And I said, well, Ashwani, you've worked there for 10 plus years. Why don't you tell me, what kind of vehicle do we need? He said, well, sir, we need one with four-wheel drive, and it's got to have space. We need space. And it's got to be safe. I said, okay. Well, I'll tell you what, Ashwani, why don't you go out and find the vehicle? You go buy the vehicle. You know what we're looking for. And if you can get us a great deal, we'll pay you a commission. Well, I can tell you that you could hear a pin drop on that phone call. He'd never been challenged. He'd never been able to be a part of something and use his brain. And anyways, he was very excited. He said, sir, I will find the best vehicle for you. I accept the challenge. I will go and I will do this. And so fast forward 6 months later, I had coffee with his old boss, who used to manage the contract, and he was Ashwani's boss. And I said, you guys had a vehicle there? And he said, yeah, we did. I said, so let me ask you a question. Was that vehicle clean? He said, no. It was a total mess. He said, we had to go down there, and write a Schwani up multiple times because that vehicle was so messy. I said, okay. So then I run into someone else from our business who was at the site, and he came to me and said, I was just at that client location. He said, we have a very nice vehicle. I said, yeah, a Schwani bought it. I said, let me ask you a question. Is it clean inside? He said, man, you could eat your breakfast off the floor. And right then, right there, I knew we were onto something. We had changed an employee that had worked for 5 or 6 different companies, biggest company on the planet, as an employee into a stakeholder, someone who had a stake in our company, in our decisions. So I was very excited. So we start moving along. We had multiple instances of these types of situations, which was great. And then finally one day in rural Nova Scotia, we had an individual named Paul, and we had a client issue come up, and we needed a shift covered. And it was on his birthday. Now, I can tell you in the security guard space, when someone gets a day off and it's their birthday, they don't go to work. They are not interested. But Paul, who's a stakeholder, he decides he's going to go in on his birthday. So, look, I was very proud. I sent him a text. I said, thank you, Paul, for going in on your birthday. And he writes me a text back, and it says, no problem. This is my company, my family. I get that text, and I am so excited. I was going to go to Mount Kilimanjaro and stand on the roof of that, or not the roof, the top, sorry about that, Jim. See, you see? I was going to stand on the top of the mountain and say, I've got proof. I now have proof in writing. We did it. We are doing what we said we were going to do, and this is very exciting. But instead, I was on a flight from Halifax to Toronto, and I thought, well, what I can do is I'll cut and paste this text, and I'll send it around to 1,000+ staff that we have across the country to show them how proud I am of this moment. So I do that. I cut and paste. I put it in. Okay, I send it off. Now, unfortunately, as a fast-moving entrepreneur who is dyslexic and has ADHD and is overly passionate, if you wrap that in with autocorrect, you don't get a good result. So I'm moving quickly. I'm trying to beat, I want to keep it in service. And sure enough, if you can't see it, hey guys, want to share a powerful text I just received from Paul, who stepped up on his birthday to cover off a shift. After thanking Paul, he replied with, no problem, this is my company, my family. So my reply, or my text, my email says, very proud that we have Suck, Dedicated, and Patio our people. Spoken like a true stakeholder. Now, there's 2 parts here. The first part, I don't think anybody knew what I meant. The second part, I think they did, but what I wrote was this. So, sure enough, the plane takes off. I'm high-fiving myself. I am so excited that I was able to move quickly and get this email off. Sure enough, my assistant runs in to see my wife, and she says, this is bad. This is really bad. He really made a mistake this time. This went to all staff, everybody. So I get home that night, I get in the house, and my wife says, you sit down, we are going to talk. So I, at this point, didn't know what was going on. I sit down. She said, you're the CEO of this company. You cannot write emails like that without proofreading them. I said, honey, I proofread that twice. So now you know I have bigger problems than messing up expressions, okay? So, look, the question now is, what are the results? What are the results from all this stuff? And I can tell you there's lots. We've had 60% growth in our business this year. We are doubling the industry average in profit. We're very proud of that. And I really look at this, if you can go back to the drawing board, not just on your end product, okay, or end service, but in everything that you do, and have all your people going back to the drawing board on, how you hire, your culture, how you train, everything that you do, then I really believe that you'll have an explosion of growth. And this chart really shows how technology moves, but when a computer can build a computer, this is the theory of singularity and how it applies to technology. Technology will go crazy, okay? It'll advance so quickly. And I believe the same thing for your business. I absolutely feel you will have the same growth like we are. So look, in closing, if you are a CEO, a manager, a leader, and you're not pushing your people to go back to the drawing board, to creatively seek solutions with a blank slate, okay? Shame on you, because you should be. And if karma gets you, you'll probably get disrupted by a bored 13-year-old with a heavy imagination in their basement. And if you're on the other side of that coin and you report to a leader or CEO and they aren't pushing you to go back to the drawing board, to be creative, tap into your 4-year-old mind of when there were no borders, then I think it's time to get a new leader. They have this other saying, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And I've heard this for years. So many people tell me this. Well, we believe that you should go back to the drawing board on that too. And if it's not broken, break it and put it back together better than you found it. Thank you.